Are you feeling more fulfilled now that you're back to work?
No. I need a vacation.
See the movie that critics are saying is an awesome,
Look at that.
crowd-pleasing, fist-pumping, all-out brawl of a film.
You're right about that.
They're coming after our family. Go fix this.
Oh, my.
Nobody 2, rated R, only in theaters now.
This is Optimal Finance Daily, Specific Identification of Shares by the Mad Fientist of madfientist.com. A few months ago, I wrote a couple of articles about harvesting investment gains or losses for tax purposes. In the tax loss harvesting post, I described how it can be beneficial to sell investments for a loss in order to use that loss to reduce your taxable income. Conversely, in the tax gain harvesting article, I showed that in some situations, it may be a good idea to sell your investments for a gain to increase your cost basis. What I didn't tell you is how to structure your taxable portfolio so that you can easily sell the investments that have depreciated in some years and those that have appreciated in others. Today, I'll do that. Cost basis. When you buy an investment, the price you bought the investment for is the cost basis. Note, the cost basis can be adjusted for stock splits, dividends, etc. The cost basis is important because it's used to calculate how much tax is owed when an investment is sold. Accounting methods. When you sell an investment, there are various accounting methods that can be used to determine the cost basis. The 3 types that Vanguard offers are average cost, FIFO, or first in, first out, and specific identification. To illustrate the differences between these various methods, let's create an example scenario to play around with. Assume you purchase 100 shares of investment X in your taxable portfolio every year for 3 years. In year 1, you purchase 100 shares of the investment for $10 per share. When you buy the investment again the following year, the price has risen to $20 per share. So you buy 100 shares at $20 per share. Finally, in year 3, the price has risen again, and you purchase 100 shares of the investment for $30 per share. Average cost. The average cost method simply takes all of your cost basis values and averages them to produce a single cost basis for all your shares. In the example provided, the cost basis using the average cost method would be $20 per share. This is a reasonable way of doing things, but what if the price of the investment falls to $20 in year 5, and you'd like to harvest those losses on the shares you bought in year 3? With average cost accounting, you wouldn't be able to because your average cost basis would be $20. So selling 50 shares of the investment for $20 wouldn't result in any gains or losses. First in, first out, or FIFO. The second method uses the cost basis of the oldest shares in your portfolio first. That is, the shares that go in first are the first to come back out. So again, in our example scenario, you still wouldn't be able to harvest your losses using the FIFO method either, because if you sold 50 shares when the price dropped to $20, you'd actually create a taxable gain of $10 per share because you'd be selling the shares that you bought in year 1 for $10 per share. Specific identification. Luckily, the final accounting method, specific identification, allows us to specify which specific shares we would like to sell. To harvest our losses in year 5, when the price falls back to $20, we would simply specify during the sale that we would like to sell the shares we bought in year 3 for $30 per share. What if we instead wanted to harvest our gains when the price was at $20? The specific identification method would allow us to do this as well, because we could simply choose to sell the shares that we bought in year 1 for $10 per share instead. Changing methods. At Vanguard, the default accounting method for mutual funds is the average cost method, and the default for brokerage shares is FIFO. Although you can change your cost basis method during the execution of a trade, it makes sense to update your default cost basis method for all taxable investments to the specific identification method. To do this in Vanguard, you simply need to select the account maintenance option under the My Accounts tab and then click the cost basis method link. taxable accounts. Please note, you only need to worry about cost basis in your taxable accounts. Cost basis is irrelevant in tax-advantaged accounts, that is 401ks, IRAs, etc., because gains within those types of accounts are not taxed when shares are sold. Conclusion. As you've heard, specific identification of shares is the best cost basis accounting method for those wanting to minimize taxes. Although it adds an extra step when selling your investments, having control over exactly which shares you sell is well worth the additional effort. You just listened to the post titled Specific Identification of Shares by the Mad Fientist of madfientist.com. This message is brought to you by Apple Card. Does this sound familiar? You're in line at checkout, cart full of items, your toddler is screaming for a treat, and you left your wallet in the car. Or was it at home? No need to panic. With your iPhone in hand, you can tap to pay using Apple Card with Apple Pay, and you'll earn 2% daily cash back when you do. So if your credit card isn't Apple Card, maybe it should be. Subject to credit approval. Apple Card issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Terms and more at applecard.com.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Between two-factor authentication, strong passwords, and a VPN, you try to be in control of how your info is protected. But many other places also have it, and they might not be as careful. That's why LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast for 40% off. Terms apply.
This article is very relevant for investors who want to take advantage of tax loss harvesting. The basic idea here is that you sell investments that have decreased in value and then use the losses to decrease your income taxes. Here's an example Mad Fientist provides. Quote, say you bought 600 shares of VTSAX for $110, and then a few months later, the price drops to $100. Since your $66,000 investment is now worth $60,000, you have $6,000 worth of unrealized losses. If you decided to sell your shares and take the $6,000 loss, you can then use that loss to cancel out capital gains or lower your taxable income by a maximum of $3,000 per year. Any losses in excess of $3,000 can be carried forward to future years. End quote. The key here is to sell and then use that money to immediately buy shares of an index fund that performs similarly to VTSAX, but it's different enough not to be considered a wash sale. Tax loss harvesting is a great way to optimize and reduce your tax burden. So why don't I do it? One big issue with tax loss harvesting is that it forces you to pay attention to what the markets are doing and actually look at your accounts. And I think the biggest strength to my investment strategy is that it's very set it and forget it. A number of years ago, Fidelity did a study where they looked at which of their accounts did best. And it turned out that they were the accounts of people who forgot that they had an account at Fidelity. I'm sure I could benefit from some tax loss harvesting, but I'm not sure those benefits outweigh my current simple strategy when it comes to investing. And that will do it for another edition of Optimal Finance Daily. Have a great day. Thank you for listening, and I'll be back tomorrow. So I'll see you there where your optimal life awaits.